Welcome back. Over the last few years, several members of Cincinnati City Council have dealt with issues of ethics and conflicts of interest. In 1973, Ohio law spelled out ethical standards for public officials and employees. A 6-member Ohio Ethics Commission has oversight over all government officials and employees at the state and local levels, except legislators, judges, and their staffs. To discuss the role of the Ohio Ethics Commission, I am joined now by Anne Marie Tracey. Ms. Tracey is an associate professor of Legal Studies and Business Ethics and co-director of the Cintas Center for Ethics and Social Responsibility at Xavier University Williams College of Business. For 14 years, she served as a judge on the Hamilton County Court of Common Pleas. From 2004 to 2009, Professor Tracey served as on the Ohio Ethics Commission, including 1 year as chair. Currently, she serves on an Ohio Supreme Court task force appointed by Chief Justice Thomas Moyer to review the Ohio disciplinary system for judges and lawyers. Recommendations are due later this year. Welcome to Newsmaker, Anne Marie. Just to begin, the politics and ethics, government and ethics,
they go together.
There would be a lot. Well, there would be a lot of people out there who believe these are mutually exclusive terms. Now, you've not only been around the ethical side of this and on the commission, but you've been around politics a long time. You and I have known each other a long time around political issues. What would you say to people who are cynical about ethics, politics, and government?
Well, as you pointed out, my perspective comes from having worked for the city of Cincinnati, the federal government, the state government. So I have to disclose. Disclosure is part of what ethics is all about. You have to disclose that bias. But ethics and government absolutely can go hand in hand, and I think for the most part that is what happens.
Are the ethical standards spelled out in the law specific enough, thorough enough that they actually mean anything? Do they have any teeth to them?
They have teeth, but for the untrained eye, which I fall in that category as well, sometimes it can be very difficult to discern. The idea, though, is that you don't want to put too much in there because then people feel that they can't accept a cup of coffee from somebody, perhaps. Although we have talked about accepting a cup of coffee when I was on the Ethics Commission. So they definitely have teeth. They definitely provide a great overview, and sometimes the application of the law to specific facts is where the real work has to be done.
And would that be done by the commission?
Absolutely.
Okay. How do issues come to the commission? How is the commission out there looking actively, trying to survey the media and say, oh gee, in Chillicothe this issue has come up? How do issues come to the commission?
Well, the commission doesn't go through people's email or anything like that. The issues generally come in a couple of different ways. They can come because a citizen has sent a letter. They know that their mayor has hired his grandson to be a summer lifeguard, and is that allowed by the ethics law? Ethics Commission investigators read the newspaper. They
do read the newspaper.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And not out to get anybody, but if something comes to your attention and it's in the newspaper and it's something that should be pursued, absolutely that will be followed up. Another way is that people who are government employees or public officials actually write in to the Ethics Commission and ask Ethics Commission advice about prospective conduct. Is it okay to go work for this company after I leave my government employment?
And for example, that's what caught my attention. You had a guest editorial in the Cincinnati Enquirer, and talking a bit about the case with John Cranley. As I understand that, when John was on city council, he asked for an opinion. So he was an elected official.
Yeah.
Am I correct on that? That's how that issue came to you?
That's my recollection, yes.
And so there was a elected official who was seeking guidance on what to do.
And that's the best case scenario, is somebody who's thinking about it, has recognized, and government officials get training, there's ethics training that they're required to go through, or it's suggested that they go through, they recognize that there's a potential question, and then they write in. And sometimes it's very simple. It's like, no, that's no problem whatsoever. But sometimes the problems are a little thornier, and the commission would visit that question then.
There are 6 commissioners, 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats,
Right.
is that correct?
Right.
And this is the traditional nominated by the governor, approved by the Senate
Yes.
sort of model? And
Yes.
is that the division between the 2 major parties, is that part of the standards? I mean, it's always going to be 3 and 3?
It's by law.
Okay, by law it
Yes.
has to be that way. Then there's also a staff, is that correct?
That's right.
Who can do investigations? Do they have the ability to subpoena people? Do they have the ability to
Yes.
subpoena records?
Yes.
They do. So they
But
can
I should point out that the commission has 2 different kinds of activity. One is advisory, that is, a city council person writes in and asks for an opinion. The other is investigative, and those are 2 separate functions.
Okay.
So the commission would not do an investigation if somebody asks for advice about something that person would like to do. What the commission does is take what the facts are presented, and based on those facts, give an opinion. If the person has fully disclosed the facts and then acts in a manner that's consistent with the opinion, that person has immunity from prosecution. So it not only encourages people to fully disclose what's happening, but it also is a good mechanism that would prompt people to ask for advice, because if you don't and you act in a way that's inconsistent with the ethics laws, you could face misdemeanor or felony charges.
Okay, so there are teeth behind these laws.
Oh, yes, yes.
That people could get fines and or jail time?
Prison time.
Prison time? So this is serious stuff. In the case of John Cranley, he asked for an opinion. My understanding is the commission said he did have a conflict of interest if he pursued a certain development proposal, and he decided that the right thing to do was to resign from council. You acting partly, at least, on that decision. Is that your understanding?
That's my understanding.
Okay, so there's somebody who to ask for opinion. In the idea that people are elected to office, and you mentioned that they have training or they're encouraged to get training. A person who's elected, they may not know what, I mean, this is complicated. All legal stuff is complicated.
Yeah.
You lawyers and
Yeah.
judges. Okay, so I'm elected to city council, and the first part of this show is a new council member, Wendell Young, was on. How does somebody really learn about that? Does the commission provide that? Do private lawyers provide that? How do you find out?
Well, the commission should provide training. I mean, I'm sorry, the commission does provide training.
It does provide training.
Yes, absolutely. Not only in Columbus, but all over the state. And it's many times a year. I should have looked the number up, but it's probably at least 150 days out of the year they're on the road providing training. So
they're on the road, so you don't even necessarily have to go to Columbus.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I went to one here at the University of Cincinnati.
Okay.
So yes, absolutely they do that. There's mailings that go out because there are disclosure requirements if you're a public official, and so that disclosure requirement in itself prompts people to ask. It should prompt them to ask themselves questions about their relationships with businesses. So for instance, if you're on city council, having somebody take you out to lunch when they're trying to get business from the city that city council would have to approve could be a problem, even if it might be an acceptable business practice in the private sector. So it's really important for people to ask questions.
Okay. And does that apply, I mean, I can see it where, we're talking about big cities, Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati. What about smaller towns, villages, which are the small under 5,000? What about a village council member? Do they have to observe these laws?
Absolutely. Now, let me say that if somebody innocently falls into a situation where they really had no idea, that it's not likely that person's going to be prosecuted. Usually what I've seen happen in those cases is the person says, oh my gosh, I didn't know there was a problem. The Ethics Commission lets them know what the situation is. Usually they swear never to do it again. There's not a continuing issue. And there's no prosecution that goes forward.
Okay.
So absolutely, the ethics commissioners, a lot of them have been in public service. They know that, gosh, I didn't know that. And so that's all taken into consideration.
Now, okay, an issue comes before the commission. Does the commission give an opinion, or can the commission find somebody guilty? It's not a judicial body in itself, is it?
It's not. So there's the advisory component and the investigative component. The advisory component is simply advice. We're advising you that this type of conduct is fine under Ohio ethics laws, or it's problematic. And here's where the problem is. With respect to the investigative function, if the commission determines or agrees that there is a violation of law that should be prosecuted, what happens then is that the commission refers that matter to the prosecutor with the authority to handle that. Mm-hmm. So for instance, in the city of Cincinnati, if it was a misdemeanor, it would be referred to the Cincinnati city prosecutor. If it was a felony, it would be referred to the county prosecutor's office.
Well, a number of years ago when Governor Taft, there were a whole series. Did that go first to a series of questions that came up? Did that go first to the Ethics Commission and then second to the prosecutor?
Yes.
Okay, so
we
the commission,
considered that.
You did. And did you make recommendations? Did this go to the prosecutor?
I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say if we made a recommendation or not, but
okay.
It did. But the prosecutor did pursue the charges, yes.
Okay. In your column in the Enquirer several weeks ago, I want to raise a question. The Enquirer said that the commission is kind of secretive.
Yes.
You came back and said, no, we're open, we're public, but that the Enquirer rarely covered it. I want to expand that about the media in general. It's not just the Enquirer, it's also electronic media. We rarely cover anything, either Columbus or Frankfort. Having served on this statewide body, how does that perspective look? Is Cincinnati different than these other cities in the state in terms of paying attention to what's happening in Columbus?
Well, I can speak primarily from the perspective of Cincinnati Columbus. I think to a great extent, well, I would kind of joke that I would find out things in Columbus that pertain to Cincinnati at commission meetings that I never heard of in Cincinnati. And I read the newspapers and watch the news and everything. I think there's a great distance, more than 100 miles between Cincinnati and Columbus. And I don't think there is as much interest as there should be in some of the things that are happening in Columbus that directly affect the Cincinnati community. Yeah,
I've always described us as sort of a city-state, that we pretend we're not part of either Kentucky or Ohio, and I think that's a very dangerous situation to be in. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you so much, Dan.
Opens up a few questions that we can pursue in the future.
That'd be great.
Okay. If you'd like to learn more about the work of the Ohio Ethics Commission, check out their website at www.ethics.ohio.gov. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to meet the women and the men working to shape our region for the future. Have a good week.
The inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
That I will faithfully discharge
my duties as a member
of
the City Council
of the City Council
of the City of Cincinnati
to
my ability.
To the best of my ability.
Congratulations, you are now.
Earlier this month, Cincinnati City Council welcomed Wendell Young as its newest member. Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. Facing term limits, Lakita Cole resigned from Cincinnati City Council for a job with the Ohio state government, opening a seat for the Democratic Party. Coming out of last fall's election, several people thought they had claims, especially Wendell Young and Bernadette Watson. Mr. Young ran for council in 2005, 2007, and 2009. I am joined this morning by Wendell Young. Between 1967 and 92, Mr. Young served as Cincinnati police officer. After retiring, he worked as the equal employment officer for the city, assistant to the police academy commander, and diversity manager and training institute director for the Metropolitan Sewer District. After retiring from the city, he decided it was time for a real challenge, teaching high school students at Aiken High School. Mr. Young has also served as the president of the Cincinnati chapter of the NAACP and the Sentinels Police Association. Wendell, welcome back to Newsmakers and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
In your remarks to council and to the people assembled at council the day that you were sworn in, you thanked the people for those who helped in the last few weeks to get you the appointment. You know, we know about elections. What's involved when there's a vacant seat and people want that seat? What do you have to do?
Oh man, I tell you. When I thanked everybody, there are people who lobbied for me just ceaselessly. And even though it was Lakita's seat, I guess the person I really felt sorry for was Cecil Thomas, because he got call after call after call after call. And I'm glad for that, because some people didn't think I had the kind of support I had. But that's what I meant when I was trying to thank people, because there were people who just, without my asking them, went to bat for me.
Is there an organized campaign though as well? Were you strategizing and doing things specifically to influence people?
Actually, I did not. I'm told that there were some people who had an organized campaign to do that. But I realized early on there were two people that had to be convinced for me. And I really thought the person who could make that case better than anybody else was me. And when I finally had the opportunity to sit down with Lakita and really talk to her about me and the things I believe in and the things I stand for, I think that's what worked for me. Because Lakita knew me, but she didn't know me. And I think that was the first opportunity she really, really had to hear the substance that exists behind me. That I'm not some person who just wants to be on council because I want to be on council, that I really do want to serve. I think that impressed her.
During that process, there was some reference to the fact that this was a black seat. How important is that? How does that play in your mind?
I am really sorry for the way it played in the media, but I think most thinking people understand that there is the need to have representation of all of Cincinnati on city council. The way it came out in the media, it appeared that no one else would be considered. I can't speak for Lakita. I really don't know what her process was, but I'd like to think that she was conscious that race should be a factor, but not the only factor. And I'd like to think she chose me in spite of the fact that I've run 3 times and lost. I'd like to think she chose me because, like I said before, when she really had an opportunity to hear what I had to say, I think I made the best case.
You did run 3 times before. One of the issues with appointing somebody midterm is, can they hold the seat? Greg Harris was appointed to replace John Cranley. He was not able to hold the seat in the general election. What are you going to be able to do differently a year and a half from now that will allow you to hold the seat that you weren't able to do the first 3 times?
Well, you know, the good thing about running 3 times and losing is you really don't like to lose anymore. But more importantly, and I think extremely importantly, is you learn from your mistakes. The first time I ran, my campaign was my wife and I. We did well, considering that we just didn't have a clue about what we were doing. We thought we did.
You ended up about 13th, right?
13, somewhere in that area, out of a field of more than 30 people. So, and I finished behind people who had run before, close behind Damon Lynch, close behind Sam Malone. So that really was not a bad race. My second race would have been, I think, a better race, but by that time, I had begun to teach. No, I wasn't teaching school that time. I don't know what was going on the second time. Yeah, that's right, yeah. But at any rate, the second time I didn't do as well. And the last time I was just fighting health issues. And I probably shouldn't have run, but I was afraid not to, because I didn't want the party to think, okay, he's run twice, now he won't come back, so he's given up. And I'm not a quitter.
You know, one of the things, and I talk to people all the time who are thinking about running for council, And one of the things I always say to them, if you're only willing to run once, don't do it.
That's right.
Very few people win their first time out. And if you're not willing to put in and keep being persistent about it, field races are very difficult. It's very different dynamic than just running against one other person.
Well, ask me how I know you're right.
Because you lost 3 times.
Thank you. But seriously, I mean, it is true that very few people do it their first time. But when I ran in '05, there were some people who did it the first time.
Right.
So if you didn't win that time, there were people who began to think, well, maybe you can't do it, maybe you can't do it. I'm really happy for them, but even they know, and I know, I think most people know, they were very fortunate.
I don't want to get into too many technicalities about what's facing the agenda because you're brand new on council, and I promised I wouldn't. But there's a couple of things that I think are fair game here, because you talked about them in your race this last time, and that is one of the issues around the retirement system. You're a retired city employee. You've come through all of these different positions. There has been this study out there. What do you think at this point, and knowing that you still have to look at all the details and get into this from a slightly different angle now, what do you think we have to do with this?
Well, let me just clear something up since you brought that up, because there are some people who think I have a vested interest in the city's retirement system. I am a retired city employee, but I am not a member of the city's retirement system. As you know, police and fire have their own retirement. So my retirement does not come from the city retirement. Now, having said that, I am still extremely interested in
What about for the years that you worked for the city, though? Not as a police officer, but in these other positions.
The state of Ohio permits you to have one retirement.
Okay.
After that, even though you pay into those other systems, you accrue what is called an annuity.
Okay.
And so you can take that out until it's gone, or you can take it all at once, whatever you want to do. But I have one retirement, and that's from police and fire. But anyway, having said that, I'm still extremely interested in making sure that those people who work for the city, when they retire, that their benefits are intact. I abhor what's happened to them so far. And I'm really bothered by the fact that it's going to be so very, very difficult to fix that retirement. Has to be done. And it's going to be a very painful process, and you're right, I don't have all the answers. But one thing I can tell you, I will do everything I know how to do, everything I learn how to do, to make sure that the promises that are made to employees are kept. That I will do.
What about looking to the future, though? Do you think that realistically there's going to have to be adjustments? You know, there could be the one thing of fulfilling the promises that are made to past employees or current employees, but future employees can't have the same kind of retirement system?
I think that, you know, we have to be realistic in terms of how we're going to approach that. And when you look at what's going on outside government in terms of retirement plans and so forth, there's a huge shift from employers taking care of employees, period. More and more of that burden is being placed onto the employee. You need to have your own portable retirement plan, your 401k or whatever it's going to be, deferred compensation. And the same thing I believe is probably going to happen with health care. Now, how progressive and how aggressive can Cincinnati be in making that kind of shift? Do we even want to make that kind of shift? I really want to take a good look at that. But I want us to do something that people can know that when they retire, they're going to be able to take care of themselves. And I'm not sure that the city of Cincinnati will always be able to have a retirement plan with defined benefits that tells people what they're going to get, or if we're going to shift to a system or try to move to a system where we can make sure that employees have their own retirement, and perhaps we can help them manage that. But whatever we do, I want to make sure that employees are properly taken care of.
One other sort of general area before we run out of time here, that is the city budget in general. We now have 2 out of 9 members of Cincinnati City Council, you and Cecil Thomas, who are retired police officers. One of the areas that may need to be cut is the police force. Chief Stryker has even said, that a number of years ago he was asked to hire more police officers by council than he really even thought he needed. And now the cutbacks need to be made. Are you two, though, in a bind because of your history, your personal history, in making that kind of decision?
I can't speak for Cecil Thomas.
Right, I understand
Okay.
that. Just you.
But for myself, no, I don't feel that I'm in a bind at all. I think I have a better insight into how the safety department, especially the police department, operates. And I think I have a better insight into how cuts that are made will affect the delivery of police service and our entire safety forces. I think I also have a sensitivity in terms of what citizens feel about that. And I know how very painful that's going to be if it has to happen. So I don't feel that I'm in a bind, but I do feel that I have the extra sensitivity that it's going to take to make the proper decision.
Well, Wendell, thank you very much for being here this morning. Good luck, and you'll be back because now you have to govern, not just campaign.
You're right, and I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Stay tuned. Ethics in public life. What's involved? Who's responsible? Next on Local 12 Newsmakers.